Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi ma'am.
My name is Mustika Fadjria Andini.
My name is Alifa Azra Chiara. Today we want to take video about civil law and criminal law. Civil law and criminal law are two broad and separate entities of law with separate sets of laws and punishment.
Examples of criminal law include cases of burglary, assault, battery, and cases of murder. Civil law applies to cases of negligence or malpractice. For examples,
definition of civil law. Civil law deals with the dispute between individuals, organizations, or between the two in which compensation is awarded to the victims.
Definition of criminal law is the body of law that deals with crime and the legal punishment of criminal offense.
Burden of proof. Civil law is preponderance of evidence. The burden of proof falls on the plaintiff. One must produce evidence beyond the balance of probabilities.
Burden of proof criminal law is beyond a reasonable doubt. Burden of proof is always on the state or government.
Examples of civil law is landlord or tenant disputes, divorce proceedings, child custody proceedings, property disputes, and personal injury.
Examples of criminal law is theft, assault, robbery, trafficking in controlled substance, and murder.
The type of civil law punishment is civil litigation usually involves some type of compensation for injuries or damage as well as disposition of property and other disputes.
Type of criminal law punishment is a guilty defendant is punished by incarceration and or fines or in exceptional cases the death penalty. Crimes are divided into two broad classes, felonies and misdemeanors.
Civil law cases filed by private party.
Criminal law cases filed by government or state.
Appeal of civil law is either party.
Appeal of criminal law is only defendant.
Jury of civil law is state laws doesn't have to be unanimous.
Jury of criminal law is unanimous decision.
In civil law, a case commences when a complaint is filed by a party, which might be an individual, an organization, a company or corporation against another party. The party complaining is called the plaintiff, and the party responding is called the defendant, and the process is called litigation. In civil litigation, the plaintiff is asking the court to order the defendant to remedy a wrong, often in the form of monetary compensation to the plaintiff.
In contrast, in criminal law, the case is filed by the government, usually referred to as the state and represented by a prosecutor against a defendant. An individual can never file criminal charge against another person. An individual might report a crime, but only the government can file criminal charge in court. Crime are activities punishable by the government and are divided into two broad classes of seriousness. Felonies having a possible sentence of more than 1 year incarceration and misdemeanors having a possible sentence of 1 year or less incarceration. One of the notable difference between civil law and criminal law is the punishment. In case of criminal law, a person found guilty is punished by incarceration in a prison, a fine, or in some occasion death penalty.
Whereas in case of civil law, the losing party has to reimburse the plaintiff. The amount of loss which is determined by the judge and is called punitive damage. Criminal litigation is more serious than civil litigation, in that criminal defendants have more rights and protection than a civil defendant.
In case of criminal law, the burden of proof lies with the government in order to prove that the defendant is guilty. On the other hand, in case of civil law, the burden of proof first lies with the plaintiff and then with the defendant to review the evidence provided by the plaintiff.
In case of civil litigation, if the judge or jury believe that there are more than 50% of the evidence favoring the plaintiff, then plaintiff win, which is very low as compared to 99% proof for criminal law. In case of criminal law, defendant is not declared guilty unless there are approximately more than 99% proof against him.
One can say that criminal law deals with looking after public interest. It involves punishing and rehabilitating offenders and protecting the society. The police and prosecutor are hired by the government to put the criminal law into effect. Public funds are used to pay for this service. If suppose you are the victim of the crime, you report it to the police, and then it is their duty to investigate the matter and find the suspect. In most cases, if a charge has been properly present and if there is evidence supporting it, the government, not the person who complains of the incident, prosecutors, it is the courts. This is called a system of public prosecutions.
On the other hand, civil law is about private disputes between individuals or between an individual and organization or between organizations. Civil law deals with the harm, loss, or injury to one party or the other. A defendant in a civil case is found liable or not liable for damage, while in criminal case, defendant may be found guilty or not.